She laughed at his silence and crumpled his handwritten order, thinking he was just a helpless customer she could bully. Little did she know, this mute diner wasn't looking for a meal, he was inspecting his newest investment. Watch the moment she realizes she just mocked her own boss. Kendra Shaw held the folded order slip between two fingers as though it were something damp she had found under a table. Grilled chicken, no pepper, dressing on the side, she read aloud, stretching each word into a performance for the servers gathered near the drink station. And warm water with lemon. The man in booth 12 watched her quietly. A pale surgical scar crossed the base of his throat. Beside his right hand sat a leather notebook and a black fountain pen. Kendra tilted her head. That's it, you can write but you can't speak. He pointed toward the order slip, then toward the kitchen. Instead of entering the order, she crushed the paper in her fist. A couple at the next table looked away. A teenage busser stopped stacking glasses. Kendra dropped the crumpled note beside the man's plate. This is a restaurant, not a classroom for charades. Come back when you can bring somebody who knows how to order for you. The diner's expression barely changed, but his fingers tightened around the pen. He opened his notebook and wrote another message. Please ask the manager to come to this table. Kendra read it, laughed once, and turned the notebook so the busser could see. He wants the manager. The busser, Theo Brooks, looked uncomfortable. Kendra, just get Mr. Voss. You get him. Apparently I'm not fluent in helpless. The man's eyes moved from Kendra to Theo. He gave the young busser a small nod, not asking him to intervene, only acknowledging that he had tried. Kendra leaned closer to the booth. Here's some free advice. When people are busy, all this, she waved at his notebook, comes across like you expect special treatment. The man touched the scar on his throat. For the first time, uncertainty crossed Kendra's face. It lasted less than a second, then she picked up the water glass he had not touched. I'll make this simple. You can leave voluntarily, or I can have you removed for disturbing service. He had been inside Marigold Table for 11 minutes. In those 11 minutes, Kendra had mocked his disability, destroyed his written order, threatened to remove him, and ignored the accessibility procedure printed inside the server handbook. What she did not know was that the man in booth 12 had signed the final acquisition documents for the restaurant at noon. And he had not come for lunch. Theo returned with Nolan Voss, the restaurant's general manager. Nolan walked quickly without appearing hurried, wearing a tailored charcoal jacket over a white shirt open at the collar. At 52, he had perfected the expression of a man arriving to solve a problem caused by somebody less competent. What seems to be the concern? He asked. Kendra crossed her arms. The guest is refusing to communicate appropriately, and now he's demanding management. The diner turned his notebook around. I communicated in writing. She destroyed my order and threatened to remove me. Nolan read the sentence, then looked at Kendra. Did you throw away his order? He shoved a bunch of notes at me. I couldn't tell what he wanted. Theo glanced at the crumpled paper beside the plate. Nolan noticed the movement. Theo, return to your section. But the order is right there. I said return to your section. Theo picked up his bus tub and walked away, his jaw clenched. Nolan pulled a chair from the empty table across the aisle and sat beside the booth. His voice softened into the tone businesses used when they wanted disrespect to sound professional. Sir, we're happy to accommodate reasonable needs. However, my staff is under significant pressure today. If there was a misunderstanding, I'm certain we can reset the interaction. The diner wrote again, is threatening to remove a customer part of your reset procedure. Nolan's smile weakened. Certainly not, but I wasn't present for the beginning of the exchange. 3 servers were watching now. So were most of the customers in the surrounding booths. Kendra gave an impatient sigh. He's making it sound worse than it was. The diner looked at her for a long moment, then he turned to a fresh page. He wrote slowly enough that everyone nearby could hear the scratch of the fountain pen. When he finished, he removed the page, placed it flat on the table, and slid it toward Kendra. She read the sentence. The confidence left her face before she reached the period. Nolan took the page from her hand. My name is Gabriel Rowan. I became the controlling owner of this restaurant at noon, and your employment ends now. For several seconds, the dining room seemed to lose every sound except the low hum of the refrigeration units behind the bar. Kendra stared at Gabriel, then she laughed, but it came out thin and unsteady. No, you're not. Gabriel reached into the inside pocket of his navy blazer and placed a sealed document envelope on the table. The logo of Rowan Hospitality Trust appeared in the upper left corner. Beneath it was the legal name of the restaurant group and the effective time of transfer, 12:00 p.m. Central Time. Nolan did not need to read the full document. His eyes stopped at Gabriel's name. Something more complicated than surprise moved across his face. Recognition. Gabriel saw it. Nolan recovered quickly. Mr. Rowan, I was informed representatives from the purchasing group might visit this week. I wasn't told you would personally be here. Gabriel opened the text-to-speech application on his phone. The digital voice was calm, neutral, and slightly mechanical. That was intentional. Several customers turned fully in their seats. Kendra's face flushed. So this was a trap, Gabriel typed. No, lunch was the test. Your choices were your own. You pretended you couldn't talk. His hand paused. Then he unbuttoned the top of his shirt and lowered the collar enough for the surgical scar to become fully visible. A second, smaller scar ran beneath his right jaw. He typed again. My recurrent laryngeal nerve was damaged during cancer surgery 6 months ago. I did not pretend. Kendra looked away, but not with remorse. Her eyes went to Nolan, searching for rescue. Nolan stood. Mr. Rowan, I understand your anger, but the transfer agreement preserves existing management authority during the 30-day transition. Terminations require documented review. Gabriel had expected resistance. He removed another page from the envelope and placed it beside the first. The page contained a list of employees already under active disciplinary review. Kendra Shaw's name appeared at the top. 3 written complaints were summarized beneath it, mocking an elderly customer with a hearing aid, refusing service to a man using a communication tablet, and telling a mother that her autistic son was making other guests uncomfortable. All 3 complaints had been marked unresolved. Kendra read them and shook her head. Those were misunderstandings. Gabriel typed, you were already on final warning under the company's discrimination policy. Your conduct today confirms the violation. Nolan took the page and examined it too closely. This information should not have been in the sale packet. Gabriel watched him. It was a strange statement, not that the complaints were false, not that Kendra had already been cleared, only that the new owner should not have seen them. Gabriel typed another sentence. Why not? Nolan's gaze lifted. Because personnel records are incomplete until management certifies them. Were these complaints investigated? I would need to review the files. Did you know about them? Nolan's hesitation answered before his words did. I'm aware that difficult customers sometimes make accusations against service staff. Kendra grabbed her apron strings. I'm not standing here while everyone treats me like some kind of monster. She pulled off the apron and threw it onto the table. A spoon struck the floor. I've worked doubles for this place. I've covered shifts when people walked out. I've missed my daughter's school events because she pointed at Nolan, said I was management material. One customer doesn't get to erase 8 years. Gabriel did not flinch. He typed with both thumbs. One customer did not erase 8 years. Your conduct revealed what those years contained. Kendra's mouth opened, but Nolan stepped between her and the booth. That's enough, Kendra. Go to my office. We'll discuss your options privately. Gabriel shook his head. She is no longer authorized to enter non-public areas. Kendra looked at Nolan again. This time her fear was unmistakable. You said you'd handle problems. Nolan's expression sharpened. Go home, Kendra. The words were quiet, but they carried a warning. She picked up her purse from beneath the service counter. On her way toward the front door, she stopped beside Gabriel's booth. You think buying a building tells you what happens inside it? Gabriel met her eyes. She leaned closer. People show owners what they want owners to see. Then she walked out. Through the front windows, Gabriel watched her stand on the sidewalk and pull out her phone. She did not call anyone immediately. She stared back into the restaurant first, toward Nolan's office. Nolan adjusted his jacket. I apologize for the spectacle. I'll issue a staff reminder and arrange a formal review. Gabriel typed. The review started before I entered. Nolan's eyes narrowed. Gabriel slid a printed schedule across the table. It showed that he had planned 3 unannounced visits to Marigold locations during the first week after acquisition. Only Gabriel, the acquisition counsel, and the seller's chief executive knew the dates. Yet his table had been assigned to Kendra, the restaurant's most complained about server, while 2 other servers with empty sections were told not to approach him. Gabriel pointed to Kendra's name, then to a handwritten change made that morning. Who reassigned table 12? Nolan looked toward the host stand. Our host manages rotation. The host, a college student named Paige, had gone pale. Gabriel waved her over gently. She approached with both hands clasped in front of her. Who changed the rotation? Gabriel's phone asked. Paige glanced at Nolan. He smiled at her. Just answer honestly. You did, she said. Nolan's smile remained, but only as a shape. Because Kendra was next. Paige swallowed. She was. You told me if a man came in alone carrying a leather notebook, I should put him in 12 and give the table to Kendra. A murmur moved through the dining room. Nolan turned toward her. You're confused. No, sir. You've had trouble understanding rotation before. Paige's cheeks reddened. You wrote it on the reservation sheet. She hurried behind the host stand and returned with a clipboard. A note had been written beside the lunch rotation in Nolan's narrow block letters. Single male, navy jacket, leather notebook, booth 12. K.S. Gabriel had told the acquisition attorney what he would be wearing so she could identify him if an emergency arose. He had not told Nolan. Someone had leaked the information. Nolan stared at the clipboard, then shrugged. The seller's office sent a courtesy notice. I wanted our strongest server handling an important guest. Theo let out a short, disbelieving laugh from the drink station. Nolan turned. Do you have something to add? Theo set down a tray. You called Kendra your strongest server last week when she made Mrs. Donnelly cry because it took her too long to count cash. That is not what happened. I cleaned the table after. Nolan's face hardened. Clock out. Gabriel raised a hand. Theo stayed where he was. Gabriel typed. No employee will be disciplined for truthful participation in this review. Nolan's controlled expression finally cracked. You cannot operate a restaurant by inviting hourly staff to challenge management in front of customers. Gabriel's synthetic voice answered. And you cannot manage one by teaching them to fear the truth. A woman sitting near the window began to clap. Her husband gently lowered her hands, but several employees had already looked up. Gabriel did not enjoy the applause. Public humiliation, even when directed at someone who deserved consequences, had never felt like justice to him. He stood and buttoned his blazer. Without his voice, every room forced him to decide whether he would use the artificial speech on his phone or let silence carry his authority. The application made him sound composed even when anger tightened his chest. It also gave other people time to interrupt him, dismiss him, or mistake the pause required for typing as weakness. 6 months earlier, Gabriel had been able to control a boardroom with a sentence. After surgery, investors sometimes directed questions to his chief financial officer while he sat 3 feet away. He had begun noticing how quickly intelligent people became invisible when communication took effort. That was one reason he had chosen to enter Marigold without an executive team surrounding him. It was not the only reason. Gabriel pointed toward the office hallway. His phone spoke. Mr. Voss, preserve all personnel records, internal messages, scheduling files, complaint reports, refund logs, and security systems. Do not delete, alter, or remove anything. Nolan folded his arms. That sounds less like an operational review and more like an accusation. It is a preservation order. You will need to send that through counsel. Gabriel held up his phone. An email had already been sent to Nolan, the seller's attorneys, and the acquisition board. Nolan read the notification on his own device. For the first time, he seemed to understand that Gabriel had not walked in unprepared. Then the lights above the bar flickered. The point-of-sale terminals went black. A second later, the restaurant's music stopped. Page looked at the dead screen at the host stand. What happened? Nolan checked his watch. The system has been unstable all week. Gabriel looked toward the office. A small green network light beneath the server cabinet had turned red. The timing was too precise to be an accident. By 4 o'clock, Marigold table was closed to customers. Gabriel gathered the staff in the dining room and stood where everyone could see his phone screen as well as hear its voice. He informed them that they would be paid for the full shift. No one would lose scheduled hours for cooperating with the audit. Complaints could be submitted directly to Rowan Hospitality's Independent Ethics Council, bypassing local management. Most employees listened with guarded faces. They had heard promises during ownership changes before. One cook asked whether the restaurant was going to close. A server asked whether benefits would be cut. Page wanted to know if Nolan was still their manager. Gabriel answered carefully, the restaurant is not scheduled to close. Existing wages and benefits are protected under the purchase agreement. Mr. Voss remains employed during the investigation, but his access to personnel files is suspended. Nolan stood near the bar, saying nothing. When the meeting ended, he approached Gabriel with a folder beneath one arm. You've made your point. Gabriel waited. Nolan lowered his voice. Kendra was out of line. I'll support the termination, but if you turn this into a public purge, you'll destroy the value of what you just bought. Gabriel typed. What value are you protecting? 142 jobs across 3 locations. Vendor contracts, community reputation, the confidence of your lenders. Nolan stepped closer. You may own a controlling interest, but the seller retains a rescission right for material reputational harm during the first 72 hours. If this incident becomes a scandal, the acquisition can be unwound. Gabriel knew the clause. It existed to protect both parties from undisclosed criminal conduct or catastrophic public controversy. Nolan continued. Reinstate Kendra pending review. Call today a communication failure. Let me manage the staff and this goes away. Gabriel studied him. Nolan was not defending Kendra because he believed she was innocent. He was offering to bury the incident before anyone could examine what lay beneath it. Gabriel typed one word. No. Nolan's expression became almost sympathetic. You built your career by knowing when to compromise. Gabriel slid the phone back into his pocket. Nolan glanced at the scar on his throat. Your mother never learned that either. Gabriel stopped moving. Nolan seemed to realize he had said too much. Gabriel pulled out the notebook. You knew my mother? Nolan looked toward the kitchen doors. A lot of people worked here over the years. Gabriel wrote again. You recognized my name when you read the page. I recognized the acquisition group. My mother's name was Elaine Rowan. Nolan adjusted the folder under his arm. I may have met her. It was a long time ago. He walked toward the office before Gabriel could write another question. Gabriel remained beside the empty booth, staring at the hallway. His mother had worked at the Marigold location for less than a year when Gabriel was 17. She had been fired after money disappeared from the employee tip fund. The restaurant claimed she had altered payout envelopes. Elaine denied stealing, but she refused to explain why the manager's access code appeared on a form bearing her initials. No charges were filed. No public accusation was made. She simply came home one afternoon carrying her uniform in a grocery bag and never worked in a restaurant again. Gabriel had believed her, mostly. The uncertainty had been a private shame he carried into adulthood. Elaine died 3 years before the acquisition. Among the papers in her apartment, Gabriel found an old Marigold pay stub and a handwritten sentence on the back. Some places are worth saving from the people running them. That sentence had influenced his decision to purchase the struggling restaurant group. He had never told Nolan. By 6 that evening, the point-of-sale system had been restored, but 3 months of complaint records were missing. The security cameras covering the dining room had not recorded anything after 11:47 that morning. According to the maintenance log, the recorder had suffered a storage failure 13 minutes before Gabriel arrived. The office computer showed evidence of a remote reset initiated at 2:19 p.m., minutes after Gabriel ordered the preservation of records. Nolan denied touching the system. Kendra was no longer answering calls from the company's attorney. At 7:30, Gabriel's chief financial officer, Dana Whitcomb, arrived from Chicago with 2 lawyers and the expression of someone carrying bad news. Dana had worked beside Gabriel for 12 years. She was direct, disciplined, and nearly impossible to alarm. That evening, she closed the office door before speaking. Kendra posted a video. Gabriel held out his hand. Dana gave him her phone. The video began after the confrontation had already started. It showed Kendra removing her apron while Gabriel's text-to-speech application announced her termination. It did not show her mocking him, crushing his order, or threatening to have him removed. The caption read, "Millionaire owner pretends to be mute, baits waitress, fires single mother in front of customers." The clip had accumulated more than 200,000 views in 3 hours. Comments accused Gabriel of staging the incident for publicity. Others claimed he had targeted Kendra because she did not recognize him. A former Marigold employee wrote that Gabriel's acquisition group planned to fire local workers and replace the restaurant with a luxury concept. Dana took back the phone. The sellers board has scheduled an emergency review tomorrow morning. 2 lenders have requested an explanation. If they invoke the reputational clause, we could lose the acquisition. Gabriel typed, "Who recorded the clip? We don't know. The angle appears to be from behind the bar." Nolan. He says a customer must have done it. Gabriel shook his head. The angle was too high for a seated customer. It also framed Gabriel clearly while keeping Kendra's earlier behavior out of view. Dana sat across from him. There's another problem. Kendra says you grabbed her wrist when she tried to retrieve the page. Gabriel stared at her. She filed an incident report through an attorney. Nolan says he did not see physical contact but cannot rule it out. Gabriel typed more forcefully than necessary. He was standing beside her. I know, Theo saw everything. Theo is 19 and works for you. They'll call him biased. Customers saw it. We need names. Gabriel looked toward the dining room. The receipts for surrounding tables would normally identify customers through credit card transactions, but the system failure had corrupted the day's local transaction history. Someone had not merely anticipated his visit. Someone had prepared to control what could be proven afterward. Dana watched him read through the viral comments. You don't have to handle this alone. Gabriel typed, I'm not stepping away. I didn't ask you to. You were about to. Dana leaned back. The board may ask you to suspend your operational authority until the review is complete. I need to know whether you'll fight them. Gabriel looked through the office window at booth 12. The crumpled order slip was gone. He stood quickly and returned to the dining room. The plate, glass, and silverware had been cleared. The waste bins behind the service station had been emptied during closing. Theo was still there, sweeping beneath the booths. Gabriel approached him and typed, Did you see the paper from my table? Theo rested both hands on the broom. The one she crushed? Yes. Theo looked toward Nolan's office before reaching into the back pocket of his jeans. He removed a wrinkled order slip sealed inside a clear food storage bag. I figured somebody would make it disappear. Gabriel took the bag carefully. His original order remained visible. Beneath it, in smaller writing, was a request Kendra had never read aloud. Please provide the communication card listed in your accessibility policy. Gabriel had included the sentence deliberately. During acquisition review, Marigold's corporate office claimed every location trained staff to offer a laminated communication card to guests who could not speak or hear clearly. The cards allowed guests to point to common requests, allergens, and emergency needs. No one had offered him one. Theo shifted his weight. I should have stepped in sooner, Gabriel typed. You were placed in a difficult position. I still watched her do it. You spoke when your manager ordered you not to, after she crushed it. Gabriel put one hand on Theo's shoulder. The young man looked down. My little sister uses a speech device. Kendra knows that. She made jokes about it before. Gabriel's face tightened. Did you report her? Twice. To Nolan? Theo nodded. He told me Kendra brought in high tips and I needed to stop being sensitive. After the second time, I lost my Friday shifts. Do you have proof? Schedules, maybe, but complaints were on paper. Nolan said the online form was broken. Gabriel looked toward the office again. The missing records were no longer an administrative problem. They were a system of control. Lena Ortiz, the assistant manager, returned to the restaurant after 8. She had been off that afternoon and claimed Nolan had called her repeatedly, telling her not to come in. Lena was 29, compact and alert, with the exhausted posture of someone accustomed to solving emergencies before being thanked for them. When Gabriel showed her the complaint summaries from the acquisition packet, she closed her eyes. I submitted those. All 3, Dana asked, and more. How many? At least 17 in the past year. Dana placed a recorder on the desk with Lena's permission. What happened to them? I gave them to Nolan. He said he forwarded them to corporate. Did you retain copies? Not after he found the folder. Gabriel typed, what folder? Lena looked embarrassed. I started keeping duplicate complaints because employees were saying nothing happened. Nolan found them in my locker. He said confidential documents couldn't be stored outside his office. What did he do with them? Shredded them. Dana asked, why didn't you contact corporate directly? I tried. The ethics hotline transferred complaints back to local management unless they involved the general manager. When I said some involved Nolan, I was told to provide supporting documentation. The documentation was the folder he destroyed. Gabriel typed. Why did employees stay? Lena's expression hardened. Because rent is due every month whether your manager is decent or not. She explained that Nolan controlled access to the most profitable shifts. Employees who questioned him were scheduled for slow weekday lunches. Employees who supported him received weekend dinners, private events, and cash-heavy banquet assignments. Kendra had become his most loyal server. She wasn't always like what you saw today, Lena said. She could be impatient, but she used to be good with people. Then Nolan started telling her certain customers cost the restaurant money, guests who needed extra time, families using discount certificates, elderly people who split meals, anyone likely to complain. He instructed her to mistreat them, Dana asked. Not directly. He'd say things like, make them decide whether this is really their kind of place. Gabriel typed, what did Kendra receive in return? Best shifts, banquets, promises. What promises? Assistant general manager after the sale. Dana exchanged a look with Gabriel. The acquisition plan contained no assistant general manager position. Lena continued. Nolan told her the new owner wanted a more exclusive customer base. He said the people she pushed out were people you didn't want. Gabriel's synthetic voice became colder. He used my name, not yours specifically. He called you the Chicago investors. Rowan Hospitality was based in Chicago. Nolan had created discriminatory behavior, blamed it on the incoming owners, and positioned himself as the only person capable of managing the culture he had poisoned. Lena rubbed her palms together. There's something else. Tips have been short. Dana leaned forward. How short? Usually a few dollars, sometimes 20 or 30 after banquets. Nolan says credit card processing fees and guest refunds are deducted before distribution. That would violate company policy, Dana said. I know, but the payout sheets always balance. Gabriel typed, who prepares them? Nolan. Kendra signs as server representative. The next morning, the acquisition review began by video conference. The seller's representatives appeared from a polished boardroom. Gabriel sat in Marigold's office with Dana and counsel. Nolan joined from a separate room with his own attorney. Kendra did not appear. The seller's chairman opened by calling the incident deeply concerning from every perspective. Then he spent 20 minutes discussing Gabriel's behavior rather than Kendra's. Why had the controlling investor entered without identifying himself? Why had he used a personal speech application instead of requesting management immediately? Why had he terminated an employee publicly? Had Rowan Hospitality intended to manufacture evidence of poor management to renegotiate the purchase price? Gabriel typed his answers while the room waited through every pause. He explained that unannounced operational visits were authorized by the purchase agreement. He had requested management in writing. Kendra's final warning allowed termination for a confirmed repeat violation. His inability to speak was a medical condition, not an investigative technique. Nolan's attorney responded smoothly. No one disputes Mr. Rowan's medical history. The concern is whether he allowed an interaction to escalate because he knew a confrontation would strengthen his position. Gabriel looked directly into the camera. His device spoke. I ordered lunch. The simplicity of the answer created a brief silence. Then Nolan's attorney introduced Kendra's written declaration. She claimed Gabriel repeatedly ignored her questions, pushed written notes toward her aggressively, and reached for her when she attempted to return the paper. She denied mocking his disability. She said the crumpled order was an accident caused by her nervousness. Most damagingly, she claimed Nolan had never encouraged mistreatment of customers. Gabriel looked at Nolan's image on the monitor. Nolan appeared troubled by the allegations, as if he were learning them for the first time. The seller's chairman announced that Gabriel's direct management authority would be temporarily transferred to Dana pending a 48-hour investigation. The acquisition would remain in force, but the seller reserved its right to unwind the transaction. After the call, Gabriel remained seated. Dana closed her laptop. This is temporary. He typed, they believe her. They believe risk. That is not the same thing. No, it's worse. Facts can change belief. Risk makes people stop listening. Gabriel turned toward the office window. Nolan was in the dining room speaking to employees. He had already resumed control of the space despite his suspended access to records. Gabriel typed, remove him from the building. Dana shook her head. The board order preserves his operational role unless we establish tampering. He reset the system. We can't prove he initiated it. He knew my clothing and arrival plan. He says the seller notified him. He knew my mother. Dana's expression changed. What? Gabriel explained Nolan's comment. Dana listened, then said, why would your mother matter to him? Gabriel looked down at his notebook. I don't know yet. A voice came from the doorway. I might. Ruth Bell stood there in a cook's coat holding a faded photograph. Ruth had worked at Marigold for 26 years. She was 63, broad-shouldered, and known for refusing to use timers because, according to Theo, she could hear when food was done. She placed the photograph on the desk. It showed 7 restaurant employees standing beneath an old Marigold sign. The year 2001 had been written on the back. Elaine Rowan stood at the far left, younger than Gabriel remembered her, wearing a server apron and holding a tray against one hip. Ruth stood beside her. At the far right was Nolan Voss. He had been a shift supervisor. Gabriel touched his mother's image. Ruth sat down slowly. Elaine didn't steal those tips. Gabriel looked at her. Ruth continued before he could write. Nolan did. Dana closed the door. Ruth explained that the restaurant's general manager at the time had been skimming cash from pooled gratuities. Nolan helped alter the payout envelopes and received a share. Elaine discovered the shortage because she kept a private record of every shift. She was going to report them, Ruth said. Then they found out I was working under a social security number that wasn't mine. Ruth's eyes lowered. I was 19. My mother had brought me here when I was a child. I didn't have legal status then. Nolan told Elaine that if she accused management, they'd report me and say I helped steal the money. Gabriel's hand trembled around the pen. He wrote, why did she accept the blame? Ruth's voice broke, because I had a baby. She wiped her cheek. Your mother said losing one job was better than a child losing her mother. She signed a statement saying she had made errors in the tip envelopes. They agreed not to call police. She made me promise I'd never tell you. Gabriel stared at the photograph. For 25 years, he had remembered the grocery bag containing his mother's uniform. He remembered asking why she would not fight. Elaine had told him that sometimes surviving with your conscience intact was the only victory available. He had been 17 and angry. He called her weak. That was the last conversation they ever had about Marigold. Ruth reached across the desk. She wasn't ashamed of what she did. She was afraid you'd spend your life trying to repair something that had already cost her enough. Gabriel's eyes filled. He turned away from the others and pressed 2 fingers against his mouth, an old habit from when silence had still been a choice. Dana waited. After several moments, Gabriel wrote, did Nolan know she was my mother when I came in? He knew her last name. He knew you were buying the company. Nolan asked me 2 months ago if Elaine ever had children. The room seemed to narrow around the photograph. Gabriel had assumed the acquisition leak was intended to prepare Kendra for a secret inspection. Now he understood that Nolan's fear had begun before Gabriel entered the restaurant. The new owner was the son of the woman he had helped frame. And the acquisition would give that son access to the books. Dana's team expanded the audit. The sale agreement had required Marigold's financial records to be copied into a protected digital repository used by the lenders. Nolan could delete files from the restaurant's local system, but he could not erase information already transferred during due diligence. By late afternoon, auditors found irregular transactions connected to private banquets. Guest refunds had been issued days after events were completed. The refunded amounts were deducted from employee tip pools, but the guest had not received the money. Instead, funds were transferred to a vendor called Monroe Guest Recovery Services. The company's registered address was a mailbox store outside St. Louis. Its owner was Nolan's sister. Over 3 years, more than $280,000 had passed through the account. Kendra's electronic signature appeared on dozens of payout confirmations. Dana stared at the spreadsheet. Either she helped him or he used her credentials. Gabriel typed, "She needs to be found." Kendra finally answered a call that evening. She agreed to meet Gabriel at a 24-hour diner across town, but only if he came without lawyers. Dana objected. Gabriel went anyway, with Theo waiting in a car across the parking lot as a witness to his arrival and departure. Kendra sat in a rear booth wearing a gray sweatshirt and no makeup. Without the marigold uniform, she looked younger and more frightened. She did not apologize when Gabriel sat down. "I didn't lie about everything," she said. "You did embarrass me." Gabriel opened his notebook. "You embarrassed yourself." She looked toward the window. "I have a daughter. So do many people you mistreated. You think I don't know that?" Her voice rose, then dropped when other diners glanced over. Kendra wrapped both hands around her coffee. "My ex-husband is asking for more custody. He says working nights makes me unstable. Nolan promised me a management position with daytime hours. He said if I lost this job, he'd testify that I was aggressive at work." Gabriel wrote, "So you signed a false declaration. He said it would protect the restaurant." "Did I touch you?" Kendra stared into her coffee. "No. Did Nolan instruct you to target me?" "He told me you were a corporate evaluator who wanted reasons to cut staff. He said you had a list of employees you planned to fire." "Why assign you to my table?" "He said you judged employees by how fast they handled difficult guests. He told me not to let you control the interaction." Gabriel placed a printed image of the banquet transactions on the table. Kendra's face changed. "What is that?" "Your electronic signature appears on the payout confirmations," his phone said. "I signed the sheets Nolan gave me. Did you verify the amounts?" "No, he said it was routine. You certified that employees received money they did not receive." "I didn't take anything. Did Nolan?" "I don't know." Gabriel slid the paper closer. "You know enough to be afraid." Kendra looked over her shoulder. "He said you would try to make this criminal. It may be criminal." She pushed the page back. "I can't help you," Gabriel typed. "You already know your declaration is false. If I change my story now, no one will believe me. Nolan will say I stole the money. My name is on everything. That is why he chose you." The words came from the synthetic voice without emotion, but Kendra reacted as though he had struck the table. Gabriel continued typing. "He rewarded your loyalty while placing your name between himself and the theft." Kendra's eyes filled with panic. "No, he said the signatures were for compliance. He also promised you a position that does not exist." She looked up sharply. Gabriel showed her the approved staffing plan. There was no assistant general manager role. Kendra read the page twice. "He told me it was confidential. He needed you obedient." She stood so quickly that coffee spilled over the rim of her cup. "You don't know him. I know what the records show. You came into that restaurant already wanting him guilty because of your mother." Gabriel stopped. Kendra's face revealed that she knew she had said something important. He typed, "Nolan told you about Elaine?" Kendra grabbed her purse. "He said your family had been trying to damage him for years." "My mother never made a public accusation." Then maybe she knew she couldn't prove it. Kendra walked away from the booth. Gabriel followed her to the entrance, but she turned before opening the door. "You want the truth? Nolan told me to make sure you had a bad experience. He said if the inspection went wrong, the sale might collapse." Gabriel raised his phone. "Will you state that to the board?" "No." "Why?" "Because you fired me in front of everyone, and he's the only person offering to keep me out of prison." She left. The next morning, Lena Ortiz submitted a sworn statement supporting Nolan. She wrote that she had never personally witnessed him destroy complaints, manipulate tip records, or order employees to discriminate against customers. She also stated that Gabriel terminated Kendra before conducting a complete investigation. The sellers board treated the declaration as confirmation that Gabriel had overreacted. Dana read the statement in silence before placing it on the conference table. "I thought Lena was helping us." Gabriel reread the document. The words were narrow and technical. She had never personally witnessed Nolan destroy complaints. That was true, she had given him the folder, then discovered it gone. She had not personally witnessed him manipulate tip records. She had only observed shortages. She had not heard him use the word discriminate. She had heard him instruct servers to make certain guests uncomfortable. The statement avoided direct lies while creating a false impression. Gabriel typed, "He wrote this for her. Probably. Why sign it?" Dana looked exhausted. Fear, money, pressure, pick one. A courier delivered a second letter less than an hour later. Lena resigned effective immediately. Her phone had been disconnected. Theo said she had emptied her locker before dawn. By noon, the seller's board voted to begin rescission proceedings. If the acquisition was unwound, Rowan Hospitality would lose more than $12 million in transaction costs and financing penalties. The seller had already received an offer from a property developer interested in closing the flagship and converting the site into luxury apartments. The other two Marigold locations would likely be liquidated. 142 employees could lose their jobs. News vans gathered outside the restaurant. Kendra appeared on a local afternoon program with her attorney. She repeated that Gabriel had staged the confrontation and fired her because she failed to recognize him. Nolan issued a statement expressing concern for both Kendra and all employees caught between powerful corporate interests. Public opinion turned harder against Gabriel. Someone leaked the history of his mother's termination. Online commentators accused him of buying Marigold to settle a family grudge. The truth had been transformed into evidence against him. That evening, Gabriel sat alone in booth 12. The restaurant was closed, but protesters remained outside. Their signs showed Kendra's face beside phrases about corporate cruelty. Gabriel placed his mother's photograph on the table. For the first time since surgery, he tried to force sound through his damaged throat. Only a rough breath emerged. He tried again. Pain tightened beneath his jaw. Nothing. He had delivered closing arguments in courtrooms before entering business. He had negotiated contracts across tables where everyone wanted something different. He had spoken at his mother's funeral without notes. Now the most important truth of his career was trapped behind a scar. He opened his notebook. "I am sorry." He wrote the sentence beneath his mother's image. He did not know whether he was apologizing for doubting her, for reopening the past, or for risking the livelihoods of employees who had never asked him to save anything. A chair moved across from him. Ruth sat down. She wouldn't want that. Gabriel turned the notebook toward her. "People may lose their jobs because of me. No, they may lose their jobs because Nolan built a business that can't survive honesty. I should have investigated before closing." "You did investigate, not enough." Ruth studied him. "Your mother spent years believing silence protected me. Maybe it did when I was 19, but silence also protected Nolan." Gabriel looked toward the protesters outside. Ruth continued, "You're not responsible for every lie people tell about you. You're responsible for what you do after you know the truth." She placed a small brass key on the table. "Lena gave me this before she left." The key opened an old storage cabinet in the basement. Inside were training binders, tax boxes, and restaurant menus dating back decades. Behind them sat a locked metal recipe case no one had opened in years. The brass key fit. Inside the case were carbon copies of employee incident reports. Lena had been hiding them there after Nolan destroyed her first duplicate folder. 17 complaints described Kendra's treatment of guests. 9 mentioned Nolan instructing staff to discourage low-value tables. 6 employees reported tip shortages. 2 described Nolan accessing the office computer after hours. At the bottom of the case was a flash drive taped beneath a recipe divider. It contained photographs of payout sheets, screenshots of scheduling changes, and audio recordings of staff meetings. One recording captured Nolan telling servers, "The new buyers want a cleaner room. If guests need 20 minutes to order a $10 meal, encourage them to find somewhere more comfortable." Another recorded Kendra asking whether that instruction applied to disabled customers. Nolan answered, "I didn't use that word, neither should you." Dana listened to the recordings twice. Why resign if she had all this? Gabriel looked at Lena's sworn statement again. A sentence near the end had seemed unnecessary. "All materials in my possession have been returned to their proper place within the restaurant." She had told them where to look without alerting Nolan. Lena had not betrayed them. She had signed his carefully worded declaration to make him believe she had surrendered. Then she resigned before he could force her to reveal the location of the records. Dana searched the metadata on the flash drive. The files were copied yesterday morning. "There's a note." The note contained one line: "He checks bags, lockers, and phones, but he has never opened a recipe in his life." Gabriel closed his eyes. The lowest point of the investigation had been constructed by the person protecting its strongest evidence. The recordings established discrimination and retaliation, but Dana still needed to connect Nolan to the financial theft and the manipulated viral video. The audit team found both connections before midnight. Deleted internal messages had been preserved automatically in the acquisition repository under a litigation hold protocol. Nolan apparently believed deleting messages from his phone erased them from the company's server. One thread showed Nolan sending Kendra a description of Gabriel's clothing the morning of the inspection. "Make him show his temper," he wrote. "Do not let him leave happy." Another showed Nolan instructing an outside marketing consultant to prepare a worker versus billionaire narrative, in case Gabriel terminated anyone during the first 72 hours. The viral video had been uploaded through that consultant's account 17 minutes before Kendra received a copy. Nolan had planned the public scandal before Kendra entered the television studio. The financial records were equally clear. Monroe Guest Recovery Services transferred money every month into an investment account controlled jointly by Nolan and his sister. A final email contained a draft agreement with the property developer. If the Rowan acquisition collapsed and the flagship property was sold, Nolan would receive a six-figure consulting fee. Kendra had been encouraged to humiliate Gabriel so Nolan could destroy the sale, hide the embezzlement, and profit from the building's closure. Her cruelty had been real. But it had also been useful to someone more dangerous. The emergency hearing was moved from a private conference call to the Marigold dining room after employees demanded the right to attend. The sellers' board sat at tables near the front. Attorneys occupied one side of the room. Staff members filled the booths. Local reporters were permitted in the back on the condition that no one broadcast until the hearing concluded. Nolan arrived in a dark suit with his attorney. Kendra sat behind him. She avoided looking at Gabriel. Lena was absent. The seller's chairman opened the hearing and announced that the board would determine whether Gabriel's conduct justified rescinding the acquisition. Nolan's attorney spoke first. He portrayed Nolan as an experienced manager trying to hold together a vulnerable workforce during a hostile corporate transition. He described the missing records as technical failures. He called the tip discrepancies bookkeeping errors. Then he turned toward Gabriel. Mr. Rowan entered the restaurant with personal motives connected to an event involving his mother more than 2 decades ago. He concealed his identity, provoked an employee, and imposed punishment before collecting facts. Gabriel sat beside Dana, his notebook closed. Nolan's attorney continued, "This is not justice, it is revenge disguised as oversight." When he finished, the chairman invited Gabriel to respond. Gabriel opened his text-to-speech application. Before he could type, Nolan spoke. "May I say something directly to him?" The chairman allowed it. Nolan turned his chair toward Gabriel. "I'm sorry for what happened to your mother. I was young. I relied on the information given to me by senior management. But whatever mistakes were made then do not justify destroying this restaurant now." Gabriel typed, "Did my mother steal employee tips?" Nolan hesitated. "I can't know with certainty. You signed a statement saying she altered payout envelopes. I signed what management told me was accurate." "Was it accurate? I don't remember the details." Gabriel removed an old photocopy from a folder. Ruth had kept it hidden with the other records. It was Elaine Rowan's original incident report. Her handwriting described missing tip money, altered envelopes, and Nolan entering the office after cash counts. At the bottom, the former general manager had written, "Employee withdrew accusation after admitting her own accounting errors." Beside that sentence appeared Nolan's signature. Gabriel's device spoke. "You did not rely on information from management. My mother reported you." Nolan's attorney objected that the document was decades old and irrelevant. Gabriel typed, "It explains why Mr. Voss identified me before my arrival and why he needed the acquisition to fail." Dana distributed copies of the current financial records. The chairman's face changed as he reviewed the transfers. Nolan leaned toward his attorney. Dana presented the banquet refunds, false vendor payments, and consulting agreement with the developer. She explained how the restaurant's closure would trigger Nolan's payment. Nolan's attorney argued that the records had not been authenticated. Dana responded, "They came from the seller's own protected acquisition repository." The chairman looked at Nolan. "Did you disclose this consulting agreement?" "No, because it was never executed. It contains your electronic signature. It was preliminary. It pays you if the property is sold after this transaction fails." Nolan spread his hands. "I was protecting my future. New owners replace managers all the time." Gabriel typed another question. "Did you tell Kendra to make certain customers uncomfortable?" "No." "Did you tell employees the buyers wanted a cleaner room?" "I may have discussed improving service efficiency." "Did you instruct Kendra to provoke me?" No, Gabriel looked toward Kendra. She kept her eyes down. Nolan continued. Kendra made poor decisions and I regret defending her, but I did not direct her conduct. Kendra's head lifted. Nolan added, in retrospect, I should have terminated her months ago. She stared at the back of his chair. Gabriel noticed her right hand close around the strap of her purse. He typed, did you promise Kendra a management position? Nolan looked at her briefly. No. Kendra stood. Her attorney reached for her arm, but she pulled away. Yes, you did. Nolan did not turn around. Kendra, follow your counsel's advice. You told me the position was approved. This is not the time. You told me Gabriel Rowan wanted disabled customers and discount customers pushed out. Nolan's attorney rose. Ms. Shaw, your declaration states the opposite. I lied. The room went still. Kendra walked into the center aisle. I lied because Nolan said Gabriel would make me responsible for the missing tip money. He said he could protect me if I supported his version. Nolan finally faced her. You signed those payout sheets because you told me they confirmed distribution. You were the server representative. Verification was your responsibility. Her expression changed as she understood that he was doing exactly what Gabriel predicted. Nolan continued, if money is missing, perhaps the board should examine the person whose signature appears on every form. Kendra's voice shook. You used my login. That is an accusation you cannot prove. Dana pressed a key on her laptop. The first audio recording played through the restaurant's sound system. Nolan's voice filled the dining room. The new buyers want a cleaner room. If guests need 20 minutes to order a $10 meal, encourage them to find somewhere more comfortable. Then Kendra's recorded question followed. Does that apply to the disabled tables too? Nolan's reply came clearly. I didn't use that word. Neither should you. Nolan's face lost color. A second recording played. It captured him promising Kendra the assistant general manager position and instructing her to sign payout sheets without asking questions. Then Dana displayed the recovered messages directing Kendra to provoke Gabriel, make him show his temper, do not let him leave happy. Kendra covered her mouth. She had not seen that message presented in full context with the marketing consultant's instructions and the planned media narrative. Gabriel's device spoke. The public scandal was prepared before Kendra was fired. Dana showed the upload metadata. The edited clip had been sent to the consultant from Nolan's office computer while Kendra was still inside the restaurant. Nolan's attorney requested a recess. The chairman denied it. Nolan stood. You are all ignoring the central fact. Gabriel Rowan entered this restaurant intending to find wrongdoing. Every action after that was interpreted to support his conclusion. Gabriel began typing. Nolan pointed at him. He doesn't speak, and somehow that makes every silence look dignified. The rest of us have to answer in real time while he sits there composing the perfect response. Several employees shifted uncomfortably. Nolan had finally said aloud what had been present beneath every interruption and accusation. He believed Gabriel's disability gave him an unfair advantage because Gabriel refused to let it become a disadvantage. Gabriel finished typing. The artificial voice filled the room. My silence did not create your words, your transactions, your messages, or your decisions. Nolan looked toward the exits. Two investigators from the County Financial Crimes Unit stood near the front doors. Dana had provided the audit evidence to the authorities that morning. They did not rush forward or place Nolan in handcuffs for the cameras. One investigator approached and informed him that search warrants had been authorized for his office devices and financial accounts. He was required to surrender company property and remain available for questioning. The restraint of the moment made it more final. No dramatic rescue had arrived. No powerful stranger had appeared to save Gabriel. Nolan's own records had closed around him. The seller's chairman called for a private vote. It lasted 12 minutes. The board returned and announced that the rescission process was terminated. Rowan Hospitality's acquisition would remain in force. Nolan was dismissed for cause, his compensation frozen pending the financial investigation. The company would pursue recovery of stolen funds and cooperate with prosecutors. An independent firm would review all tip distributions from the previous 5 years. Employees who had lost shifts after filing complaints would receive back pay. Kendra's termination remained in effect. Her attorney asked whether she could be reinstated in exchange for cooperation. Gabriel looked at her. She had admitted the truth only after Nolan abandoned her. She had also mocked customers who had no power over her future, including people who never saw the manipulation behind her behavior. Gabriel typed carefully, cooperation may affect legal consequences. It does not erase workplace consequences. Kendra nodded as though she had expected the answer. Then she walked toward booth 12. Every eye followed her. She stopped across from Gabriel. I'm sorry, he waited. She swallowed. Not because you own the restaurant. I'm sorry because I treated you like being unable to speak meant you couldn't understand what I was doing. Gabriel opened his notebook. He wrote a sentence and turned it toward her. You understood what you were doing too. Kendra's eyes filled. He added another line. An explanation is not an excuse, but it can be the beginning of honesty. She read it and nodded. Gabriel did not offer forgiveness. Not yet. He also did not deny the possibility that she might become better than the person who had crushed his order. Kendra left through the side door without cameras following her. After the hearing, Ruth found Gabriel alone near the kitchen. She handed him his mother's photograph. She'd be proud. Gabriel looked at Elaine's younger face. He wrote, I called her weak. You were 17. I never took it back. Ruth touched the edge of the photograph. Parents know which words belong to anger and which belong to the heart. Gabriel's eyes lowered. Ruth added, she knew you believed her, even when you didn't know how. The financial investigation lasted 8 months. Nolan eventually pleaded guilty to wire fraud, falsifying business records and theft from employee tip funds. He was ordered to repay the stolen money and received a prison sentence followed by supervised release. His sister entered a separate agreement and surrendered funds remaining in the shell company's accounts. The property developer denied knowing the full purpose of Nolan's arrangement, but the company canceled the consulting agreement and withdrew its offer for the restaurant site. Kendra cooperated with investigators. She was not charged with taking the money, but she admitted signing records she had not reviewed and providing a false statement during the acquisition dispute. Her custody case was not magically solved, and her reputation did not recover overnight. She began working for a warehouse supplier and completed a workplace discrimination program as part of a civil settlement with 2 former customers. Months later, she sent Gabriel a letter. She did not ask for her job back. She described taking her daughter to a speech therapy center where one of the children used a tablet to communicate. Kendra wrote that she had spent years measuring customers by speed, tips, and convenience because Nolan rewarded her for it, but the reward only worked because part of her had agreed. Gabriel kept the letter. He did not answer immediately. Marigold Table remained open. Gabriel converted 20% of the company into an employee ownership trust. Lena returned as Director of Workplace Integrity, reporting directly to an independent board committee rather than local management. Theo received back pay for the shifts Nolan had taken from him and a company scholarship toward his hospitality degree. Paige became a training coordinator and rewrote the host procedures so guests could request accessibility support without explaining private medical information in a crowded lobby. Ruth refused every management title offered to her. She accepted a new kitchen, a raise, and a framed copy of Elaine Rowan's incident report displayed inside the staff room. Beneath it, Gabriel placed the sentence his mother had written on the back of her pay stub. Some places are worth saving from the people running them. The original crumpled order was preserved too, but Gabriel did not display it as a trophy. He kept it inside his leather notebook. Almost a year after the confrontation, Gabriel returned to booth 12 for lunch. His voice had not fully recovered. A second procedure allowed him to produce a faint, strained sound, but speaking more than a few words caused pain. He still used his notebook most days. A family entered while he waited for his meal. The parents looked nervous. Their teenage son carried a speech device against his chest. When Paige greeted them, the boy tried to type, but his hands shook. The line behind the family began to grow. Paige did not rush him. She did not turn to his parents and speak as though he were absent. She placed the restaurant's communication card on the host stand and said, "Take your time, we can wait." The boy completed his message and smiled. From booth 12, Gabriel opened the old order slip Kendra had crushed. The creases were still visible, but every word could be read. He smoothed it once against the table, then closed the notebook as Paige led the family to their booth, not because the paper no longer mattered, but because the restaurant had finally learned the lesson written inside it. A person does not become silent simply because others refuse to listen.